would like to start with a short story. So imagine me as a 9-year-old, half the size, both in that direction and in that direction. Well, maybe in that direction, like more than half the size. And when I was a child, I loved three things. First of all, I loved books, I loved maths, and that one may be an exception, and I loved puzzles. So as a child like that, it's probably not difficult to understand why one of my favorite things was a book about maths that contained puzzles. The book that I'm talking about was a book with a green owl on the cover, and I don't remember all of the riddles from this book. There is one that definitely stick in my mind, and it was about the guy that was supposed to be expecting a child, but he was also expected to be dead before it arrives. So he wrote his last will, and in his last will he decided, okay, if it's going to be a son, he will get 2/3 of my goods, and my wife will get only 1/3 of the goods. If it's going to be a girl, it's going to be other way around. So with the girl, it's going to be 2/3 for my wife and 1/3 for the daughter. The problem was that the twins were born, both girl and a boy. So, little fast forward, me today, if I would face this kind of riddle, probably my answer would be that the wife went to the lawyer, made sure that the will was discarded, and got all the money. But, yeah, as a child, that was a nice thing to kind of put your mind around it. And that's me today. I'm also solving puzzles. They are not mathematical puzzles. They are not coming from the books. But, you know, I have puzzles that are really hard, and when I solve them, my professional life is sometimes at stake. For example, when you have a storage controller that fall over instead of falling over, solving that puzzle may influence your your job, but also can influence something smaller like your end-year review. So from time to time, I like to put my brain against the puzzles that don't affect my life that directly, but still bring back this 9-year-old that loves to solve the puzzles. Love to solve the puzzles for fun, not solve puzzles as a line of work. So, before we start, a few words about me. I'm a father of 3. I'm a PowerShell /CDM MVP, and I work as a Windows engineer in Optiva, which is the company that does the high-frequency trading and stuff like this. So, very competitive environment where we expect to be very right on time and sometimes beat others to being there. So being fast. So that's why they hire smart people. Somehow they hired me as well. I suspect that was just a HR mistake. But I'm here today mainly because I love PowerShell code goals. So the puzzles that affect your brain, they kind of put your brain through the grinder and make sure that in the end the result will be something that is better than somebody else's resolution, which wasn't the case with the 9-year-old that solved the puzzles in the book. Because there was just one solution, one and one only. With the code golf, you usually have multiple solutions, and you have to pick which one is the best. So before we go into the how you solve the puzzles, I ask you guys and gals to suit up. Because, yeah, this is PowerShell Playbook, we should suit up. The problem I had with this task is that I'm not really suiting up myself very often. So I felt, okay, I won't be able to show up here in the suit, stand like that for like 45 minutes and pretend I'm enjoying it. So instead, what I did, I kind of got a compromise here. So I'm not sure you can see it. So at least now I'm suited up, I'm ready for my presentation. Let's move on. So before I show you all those nasty tricks that I'm doing and others are doing when it comes to code golfs, I would like to first go through the things that you should think of when you're solving the CalGALFs. So, the first things first, whenever you solve the puzzle, especially in PowerShell, there are multiple ways to skin the cat. There's no question about it. So in PowerShell, when you find a solution, it's just the first step, because maybe the one that you found can be shortened, but can be only shortened to a certain degree, and somebody will come up with the different solution that can be shortened even more. So you are basically at the beginning of the race, you're already kind of putting yourself in the wrong spot. So what you want to do then is actually, okay, I found this solution, maybe I can find another one, and then gradually work from there and make sure that your solution is the shorter one. That's the first thing you should have in mind. Another thing that you should have in mind is that sometimes it's not enough to just think flat. You have your task and you just go with it. You just go with the very straightforward line. Sometimes when you have this problem, you have to think outside of the box. So you have to come up, okay, what they meant, because sometimes the solution actually is hidden in the body of the problem that you want to solve. And then it's just like kind of hinted, but you have to find this hint and just kind of hook on it. And then your solution might be even shorter than the one that people will come up with. I still remember to this day, the gentleman standing over there sent me a question: how do you find program files x86 in the shortest amount of characters on the newly installed Windows system? And I was like, how would you do that? And answer was not really what I was expecting it to be, because the way he solved the problem was to use 8.3 form of this folder name, which is just progra-1 or 2 maybe. Anyways, it was very short, but it was definitely not something that immediately came to my head. So thinking outside of the box is crucial very often to solve the CalGALFs. What else? Once you find your solution kind of short, the next thing you usually do, just squeeze every last character. Like really just push it to the limits. You find even small quote that you can skip over. The space, anything. Because that may be the leverage that will make your solution a tiny bit shorter than the others, and that will make it the best. And obviously when you play, playing for fun is cool, but playing to win, it's always somewhere in the back of our heads. Okay, so you basically know how. Now let's look into those examples of different things that you can use in order to make yourself a better at shortening the code. Did I turn around? No, I did not. Okay. See, that's how you do that, and then you have extra 5 minutes to talk. Oh, darn. Okay, let's do that. So 3.1, our first demo, for each. How many of you use for each and where object, the new syntax that was, well, I'm saying new syntax, it's been there for like, what, 6 years? So I'm not sure why I'm calling it still new syntax, but the syntax that was introduced in PowerShell 3, so the for each, that where you can specify the property name immediately with all this curly nonsense that we had to do in the past. Okay, I'm actually hardly ever doing the curly thing anymore, unless I really have to. And that's something that can help you shorten your code for sure. But you can take it to the next level when you do something extra. So let's see. This is, okay, not sure what's happening. Okay, there you go. So in this case, I'm using for each to shorten the code, right? The idea here was that I should find 5 topmost extensions in the C Windows System 32 folder. And I'm using for each, which is awesome, because I could just use curly and that would make it so much longer. So I'm already kind of there. Let's take a look. So as you can see, I get some results. It took me 55 characters to solve it. By the way, if you haven't noticed, on the right-hand side, you can see in my prompt how many characters the line that I just run took, so you can more or less figure out if it was shorter, or even shorter than short. So the next one, let's try that. But this time around, I'm going to use wildcards in the for each, which is not something people very often think of, but when you use that, you can definitely beat people that didn't thought about it. And it's usually the main riddle here is to figure out how many characters you can drop, because what you have to do is make it disambiguate the name of the property or the method. And if you fail, then it will return an error instead of the results that you would expect. So if I run this one, I get exactly the same result, hopefully. There you go. And as you can see, I cut off 10 characters from the previous one. So that's a lot of characters that you just removed by understanding how the for each, and in a minute we'll show that, work. So I did mention that it works for each. Let's see that with where. So here, sorry, maybe let's just show it again, just the code first, instead of running it immediately. So here, again, the where object is being used in the new form, so I just have a question mark, then the property name, then some argument to it, and the value that I want to compare the property to. Again, because the same apply to the where object, I can shorten it even more by simple adding the di star there instead of what I did before, and I got exactly the same result. So now we can see that if you opt for shorter, you have to take into account that sometimes it's not going to be readable. That's one of the first rules you should apply to your goals. You shouldn't focus on making them readable, because they want to be if they are the best. Okay. So that was the first demo. Let's move on to the second one. Aliases. So how many of you heard that aliases are evil? How many of you still use them? How many of you use them in the scripts? Oh my God. Okay, I will pretend I didn't see that. So I love aliases myself. I'm using them every single day in interactive console. I even add my own aliases to make things that are short even shorter, or make things that are not shortened by default shorter. I generally hate typing because I type awful, make a typo in every second character. That's why I do all this magic with like typing numbers, because numbers are easier, usually. So the aliases are very good, especially when you want to play in a code golfs. The reason being that, the reason for having an alias, there are two reasons to have an alias. First one, the one that we care about, is to make it short. The second one is to have a command name that is not using approved verb in your module, because that's something that we generally as a community don't like. So if you make an alias, we are okay with that. If it's a function or a commandlet, we will probably yell at you sooner or later, or we will just send the commandlet police against you, and you're going to suffer. So, demo number one. This is coming from the 10 years anniversary golf challenge that we had when the PowerShell became 10. That was really nice thing for people like me. PowerShell team decided to throw in the contest for, I think there were 3 holes, and we had to get one. This is one of those challenges. And as you can see, I'm already using here the for each and the where object magic, right? So I already shortened it a bit, but the commandlets make it really long. And let's shorten it, and let's see what we can do about it. So the result will be sort of not interesting at all. So let's just maybe even cancel it. Who cares what patches I installed on my box during last month? I don't think anybody cares about that. So let's go to the different solution. But at least you can see the length, right? So that's important. So the different solution is actually using the two aliases we have, and there's one thing more, that it's not an alias. So we have GCIM, that stands for getSim instance. We have getSim class, get GCLS, which stands for getSim class, but we did something with date as well. And that's something that is not that obvious, and would slow down your script, so please don't do that in script, because the command resolution goes nuts with it. Basically what happens is that if PowerShell doesn't find a command that you typed, one of the things that it will do for you, because it's trying to be very helpful, it will try to append get minus to it and see what happens. And if you're lucky, you will run get date. If you have Git installed and you tell it to be part of the path, you will run Linux date and it will give you a completely different result. So yet another reason not to do that in your script. But here, it will just work the same way that the previous line worked. So I can run it again. For some reason, the second time around, it ran faster. I don't know why. But as you can see from the results, we dropped 23 characters just by switching from the full name commands to aliases. So that's one of the reasons that's whenever I hear Linux people complaining that PowerShell is verbose, I was like, are you sure? Okay. So I spoke about aliases. Maybe we can take a look at them. So how many of them we have? So here I'm going to just show you the subset, which is going to be just the commandlets that, just aliases that point to content commands. So we have AC, we have CLC, we have GC, SC, 2 characters. So it, from the commandlet it takes like what, 10 characters, I'm guessing, to 2 characters. It's already when your purpose is to make it short. This 8 characters may be the difference between winning it and being the last one in the crowd. And that's not the only thing that I wanted to show you. I did mention that you see those 2 character aliases, but we also have aliases that have 1 character. We used them before, which is, for example, for each and where objects. So those are just 1 character. So spelling it out will always give you the negative results, whereas using alias, in this case, not in your scripts, please, in this case, it will actually give you advantage. And also, when you type your commands in the interactive console, when nobody is looking, who cares? Okay. Regular expressions. My God, I could spend hours on that one. Trust me. I will try to keep it short because you had very nice presentation from Matthias yesterday about regular expressions, so you know everything about regular expressions now, and I will just kind of bring it in this area as well, so I can take advantage of those knowledge you gained day before, about regular expressions. So what do we have here? So this is another challenge. There's a very nice guy, Carlo, who goes by the handle sysadmin 2010, I believe, who annually had a golf contest. He didn't have one this year, I think, which is kind of sad. But one of the challenges he proposed was, okay, make use of just X and spaces, and by doing that, create a string that you can later convert into word PowerShell. And how the hell are you going to do that? I don't care. You just have X, space, and you just go with it. And the string that you created, so the initial string that you used for the conversion, should be part of your solution. So it cannot be like, 9x's, 1x, 2x's, 3x's, 4x's, 5x's, 6x's, because that will give you some result, but not necessarily the best one. So my idea was, okay, let's just kind of make it actually like a byte kind of thing, and just create a converter that will take this X space X and convert it into, let me see, R, and when it's XXX, it will convert it into age and all those kind of small details. And I posted that one, but obviously another problem with the golfs is that once you send a solution, you look at the code, it's like, my God, I could shorten it like in half just by doing something silly. So regular expressions are cool, but the thing that that I did here, I tried to make a capture group because I tried to be smart about it. And also, I wanted to capture 3 characters, and the way to spell it out in a proper regular expression will be dot, and then curly, and then 3, and then curly. If you count the characters, dot, 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 versus dot, curly, 3, curly, I'm not sure that the solution with the curly is actually the best one here. So, after the fact, after losing with everybody else because they made it so much better, I came up with this one. So I skipped the group. I even managed to get then a simpler expression in the switch, because then I can just use args, which is just a captured string. And as you can see, regular expression became just 3 dots. Very simple one. Not very fancy, but it did the work. And by the way, you can also see that I'm doing the for each, I'm doing the methods here. So I'm kind of using most of the tricks I mentioned before. And I was very happy with that solution, but then something struck me. I'm looking at this code and I'm saying, by the way, why would I do this like this? Okay, let me try to select this. Why I'm not selecting anything? Okay, there you go. Nope. So as you can see, there are 3 axes here. The beauty about PowerShell is that it's, we will get to that in the squeezing the last character, but I can already show you here. I can just get rid of the quotes around it, and it still works. You cannot see it, but it still works. Okay. So, as you can see, I removed the quotation around X because I don't need that. I mean, for anything else, I do, because if I put a space in between, obviously I need to quote that. But 3 X's, why would I quote that? That's definitely not the way to win the golf. Definitely the way to make it readable. So if you're writing your scripts again, it doesn't harm to put the quotations around things. But here, sure, I didn't need that. So that's regular expressions. Now for the squeezing the last bits, because I did mention that you get to this point where everything is perfect. You removed everything that you thought. You tried multiple ways, so you already experimented with this solution and with that solution, and you boiled down to the 3 solutions. All of them look identical, relatively short, but you still feel like there's some potential to remove a few more characters. And that's where our final squeezing of the string happens. So let's start with spaces, because you can write we're using very basic regular expression, but you can try to write your code like this. And in the console, in the script, everywhere, it's really the way you should do that. It gives you the results. You get your string instead of your string. So it's all perfect, right? But I can shorten it again, because I don't need those spaces around when I have quotation marks. Quotation marks here actually make it not mandatory to keep the spaces. And by removing them, well, not surprising, I just gain 2 characters. So whenever you have those situations where you can remove the spaces, removing them does help your results as well. So this is the space. Let's take a look at the quotes. So here, it's a challenge that I didn't see, I just came up with it. So sorry if it's not very interesting. So idea was find all the lines that contain UD in your hosts file. It's probably UD that is not necessary. I just used that one because I had this name for the next session that we were going to have today with Daniel. But the problem here is that I use a lot of quotes around those strings, which obviously that works. Single quotes around the string that I don't want to evaluate works perfectly. I get the string that is not evaluated, it's just literal string. If I have double quotes around the string that should be evaluated, nothing unusual happens, it gets evaluated and I get my results. By the way, it would be shorter if I would just put the stars there, But I tried that, and it was very slow. So I thought, okay, this is not something that I want to demo to you guys, because then we would wait for like 5 minutes before we get the results. It wasn't the point of this presentation. But you could shorten it still by removing this SDE, because in theory that should find your hosts unless you have other files that are almost in the same locations, which is highly unlikely. So this is the way we start with. This is, oh, sorry, not space. That guy. Nope. See, I told you, I'm terrible at typing. So, because I'm in the command mode, by the way, how many of you know about 2 modes in PowerShell? So, I'll maybe just describe it a little bit. There's command mode, and there's expression mode. In expression mode, any string that you have to quote. But in the command mode, where we sit now, because we start with the command, strings generally don't have to be quoted at all. Like, really, there's no reason to quote them unless there are some characters that would normally change the mode or trigger some behavior that you don't want, for example, semicolon or brackets or what have you, or a space, for example. So in this case, I don't have spaces, I don't have brackets, I just have string, and then I have variable that will resolve to something, and yet another, some strings that I want to concatenate to that one. So that line works exactly the same like the one before. And again, as you can see, I kind of cut off 4 characters just by removing the quotations, double quotations. Those things can go if you know what you're doing, obviously, because then if you're not sure what you're doing, then it may cause some issues. Good thing about current days is that we have PSC line that will immediately show you when you screw up and you remove too much. So, for example, if I would try to say, I'm adventurous, let's just remove that one. Oh, actually, I can. No, see? The problem is that now it just took everything as one string and tried to put it in the pattern, and now it's asking, okay, I know your pattern, what's your file? And I didn't want to specify it, so I will just cancel it. So this is how you can just squeeze these last characters by removing spaces, quotations. Sometimes other characters can be also removed when you analyze the long line of code and you realize that you have so many brackets, but half of them are useless because you didn't need them in the first place, and you put them just in case. You can squeeze that by removing those brackets and still be good to go. Okay. Now about thinking outside of the box. So that's another challenge. I think it was also coming from Carlo. So idea was write a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 without using any digits. It's like write a number without the digits. That sounds stupid. I mean, why would you do that? I mean, obviously, none of those challenges are something that you would do for production code. That's why I mentioned that in the abstract for this talk. It's not something you do for production, it's something you do for fun. But I came up with a solution that I thought was really amazing. So what I did, I found this Unicode character that you unfortunately cannot see on the screen, maybe with this font, but there's a special character that looks like this. With Unicode, Unicode's representation of this character is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's using another trick that is very often used for community. That if you just convert char to char, you get the char back, not number. And the easiest way to convert anything to number is to add plus in front of it, because all of a sudden that becomes an integer. Because you're adding it to nothing, therefore it thinks, okay, you want to have a number. There you go. I'm in PowerShell, I'm going to help you. I'm going to convert everything you want to number, or fail with while doing so. But in this case, if you run that, I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Awesome. And I thought, like, there's no better solution. No way. I was wrong. So another solution that somebody came up with is, okay, I have this character, and the char thingy is kind of long, so maybe I can just make it an array, treat it as an array of characters, because a string, that's all it is. Take the first element of it and make that a number, right? The problem is that if you would put 0 here, it's kind of violating the rules, right? because again, you are putting a number, and you should not do that. So the first approach he took, because I read his retrospect how he was building it, was to put something like false in there. It's like, is it any shorter? And not really. It's actually 2 characters longer than the previous solution. But he started with this, so again, thinking outside of the box, going a completely different way, led him to come up with yet another solution. So what else will resolve to 0 that is not a 0? So we know that false converted to number will be 0, right? What else? Any ideas? Yeah, empty string. That's exactly what he did. So just put it like that. So now it's just array of characters, right? Obviously, you take the first element of this array, obviously, and then you convert it to number. And guess what? The result is as expected, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's obviously the winning solution, because if compared to mine, I went down to 10, his solution is 8, 2 characters less, so there was like 20 people between me and him. Okay. But that session would not be complete if I wouldn't take a step to try to solve the challenge that Tobias provided us with, right? He obviously triggered my brain, because that's how my brain works. I see the problem, I want to solve it. If I see the code gulf, that it's, yeah, I cannot really walk by and pretend I didn't see it. It's itching, it causes some disturbance in force, and I just have to try it. So let's take a walk through the code. Okay, I think I have it in the ISC, so that we can actually walk step by step through it. So the idea was that, okay, you have this password string, and I kind of went along and just kind of ignored certain things. So for example, I just skipped completely about this TLS12, because I said, okay, this is not really part of the solution, it's just a changing of your behavior of your shell. So I ignored that part, I scratched it. So the initial problem was something like that, that you have a string, you convert it to the SH1 hash, and then you take the string, you divide it in 2, and then you first five characters you put in the URI, and the response you kind of filter, and you get the number, how often this string was used. So first thing first, you need to understand what the code is doing before you touch it, right? So that's why I'm trying to explain here what is going on. And if you run this code for this password, as you probably remember, we came up with this number, so it was used at least 50,000 times, despite the fact it's so complex. By the way, I put my wife's name 22 here, and it came up 6 times, which is already suspicious. But let's move on. So first things first, as I mentioned before, aliases, right? There are not really so many commands here, and one of them that is there is already aliased by invoke REST method is aliased by IRM. So there's no potential to shorten it. But I did mention also that when you have a command that requires you to have, when you have a command that is getter, so get minus something, you can always shorten it by removing the get. So if I run get file hash with my current file, I get the result. If I do the file hash without get, I get exactly the same result. So already 4 characters less, right? Next. Magic of for each. Honestly, I didn't gain too much from it, but I still couldn't resist. So we have this part of the code where Tobias was actually getting the bytes from $P. And I said, okay, there has to be a way to shorten it, right? So if you do it like this, you get the same result as I got here. The difference is that I actually used, I think, 3 characters less than he did, which was fine. Always some gain from it. Next off, I looked at the whole code that when he parses the output, so splitting it again, picking the value. It's like, regular expressions for the win. So I'm not sure that this is the best regular expression you can use for that kind of filtering, but that's the one I came up with. So in my case, what I'm doing is that I'm treating this whole output as a multi-line string, which is this, because you can see that he's splitting it on /r/n, which means that it's just multi-line string. And what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, find any line that starts with this hash, the part of the hash that I have, and then skip the one character. Initially, I started with proper regex here, so I had the colon here, but as you can see, $B doesn't like it, so I would have to escape it, 2 characters. So instead, I can say, wherever. I know that's going to be the 2 dots, so I'm just going to pretend it's anything. I don't care. And then I have some digits that I want to capture, right? So what I'm doing here, I'm creating regular expression that will parse this string that I received from this. And then the only thing I'm returning is $1, which is, again, in this case, captured group, which is the digit I'm looking for. So if I run this code, hopefully it will work. Hopefully I didn't forget to prepare some variables. Let's try it. I got it twice. Oh yeah, because I'm actually doing it twice, because I'm running both Tobias solution and my solution. So as you can see, the results are identical. The difference is that, let me run it again. So for this one, I used 100 characters. For this one, I used 93. So 7 characters less. Again, may not be a devastating lead, but at least it gives you a hope that nobody came up with this. Well, now everybody saw it, so sorry. Next off, I was thinking about invoke expression, and fun fact, actually afterwards I looked at the GitHub repo, and somebody came up with the same idea and eventually came to the same conclusion. So I felt like, okay, maybe I can use invoke expression to make it shorter, because there's so much magic happening with this $A, $B, capturing it, or whatever. So maybe I can just make it smarter with doing this with invoke expression. So I got the result, but in the end, the way I got there, despite the fact that I used this invoke expression, was actually longer. And by the way, that's another thing that you should keep in mind. Sometimes invoke expression is very useful in code golfs. Reason being that it's not really something that you would use in your production code. The reason being that invoke expression is, in general, subject to some code injections or attacks. It's easy to just put something in the script and then all of a sudden you just deleted all your domain controllers or Active Directory users. But in this case, you are controlling the code, you are running it yourself, hopefully not as a domain admin, therefore chances are that you will not destroy anything by doing that. So that path was that path, I just gave up on it. So the next off is obviously, yeah, let's just squeeze some more. So if you look at the code from Tobias, he was using the syntax like this. So it looks nice, but if you care about the length of the string, then the second one, it's like half of the previous one, right? Just because I removed the spaces. Same applies to the quotations. So yes, you can quote around parameters for the algorithm, but you don't have to. Why would you do that? Again, this is command mode, where any string that is not doesn't contain any spaces doesn't need to be quoted. It will still work the way you would expect it to. Next off, we have the split. So as you know, I did kind of use that part of Tobias code. So I wanted to keep it, but again, it was surrounded by spaces. Why? Well, just remove them. It won't be any readable, but at least it will work and it will be shorter. Again, 2 characters less to cope with. And last but certainly not least, we had this URI surrounded by double quotes. Again, looks nice. It kind of technically probably better solution, but if all you care about is making it short, there's really no reason to remove those double quotations, because $A will still be resolved to the value of this variable, and the string will be treated as string, so result will be the same. I'm not showing you results because there's like a long list of things, but trust me, they are the same. So the final result, at least at this point in time, was this. So this one doesn't have any spaces. It doesn't have, it has some spaces, but it doesn't have the spaces I wanted to skip. And it just returns the results I'm expecting. And as you can see, I went down to 198 characters. And then I went online, I was like, yeah, I'm the best. And then I looked at somebody else's solution, it's like, no, I'm not. Because what is the main problem here? I mean, I'm not sure if you see it from the back, or when you looked at this problem in general, is this whole part where we try to get the string into memory stream. Because that part is a shitload of characters, and majority of them we just have there because we have to. We cannot really shorten anything there. We cannot take away any part of it because we have to surround it with brackets. We have to have the square brackets around the IO memory stream. We have to create the new object from the. It's just ridiculous. So the guy that actually created already pull requests for the repo with better solution, he came up with using out file, and I said, out file. Why would you use out file if you have set content, which has alias sc? So yeah, I did kind of steal his solution to make mine better, which is something that is probably not ethical, but as I mentioned in the abstract, this is not session for gentlemen. So any tricks are good as long as you win. Well, maybe not, but at least they give you some leverage. So this is the out-of-the-box part. So what I noticed, okay, so as I mentioned, this is the what we do at the moment, right? But if you use set content and pipe $p to it with no new line, and you save it to file, which is kind of breaking the logic of the previous one because the other one was doing everything in memory. So I kind of hesitant to agree that it's correct because the idea there was you do that in memory, whereas here you just leave something behind. So if I just do the same using set content and then read the file in, I don't have to do all the magic with the IO stream, IO memory stream, all these things that were taking multiple characters without a good reason. So if you look at the results, just this small change takes away like, what, 60 characters? 58, give or take, 52, yeah, almost there. Eventually I get there. So it's like making the whole string almost 3 times shorter than the initial one, which is important in this case for sure. So I said final solution, now it's more final solution. So in this case, just by doing that, so just by getting rid of all this magic around the text encoding and memory stream and what have you, we went down to 152. So if you compare it to the one that we started with before this last step, which was 198, that's a significant change, significant drop in the number of characters. And I'm still not sure if it's the best one. Probably you can come up with something even better than that. But at least, you know, the point is that I enjoyed creating this solution. I had a lot of, like, just thinking around it made my brain work. And that's something that you definitely want for your brain. It has to work in order to get better at things. In maybe solving the problems that you really are in your line of work and are crucial for your day-to-day living. Because if you use your brain, well, it's same as with muscles, I heard. Okay, but that's all I had. Are there any questions?
What about shortening the URL?
Shortening what?
Shortening the URL.
So the question is, what about shortening the URI? And I agree that's kind of, again, thinking outside of the box. Because, sorry, maybe I just close that one because it's flickering like crazy for some reason. So I do agree that that would definitely cut off the length. And also I noticed that the guy eventually gave up on the protocol part. So he had just UI with just like API dot something dot something. So taking away those characters would definitely help. So again, when you see something like that, it depends on the rules, and sometimes you know the rules are actually added after the fact because the author of the challenge decided, okay, I don't want that. But if that's not in the rules, there's nothing stopping you from using the bit.ly or what have you, and making it like just instead of the whole link, just making it just like this is very tiny. Does it answer your question? Cool. Any other question? If not, then it's time for summary. So slides and demo code will be obviously published to the... oh, sorry. Could you repeat the last part of the sentence? Because... so the question is, can I recommend the sites where you can find those problems? So basically, the place where you can just put yourself to test and test your limits. So I actually had a hard time finding any. In the past, I knew that there was a site, but unfortunately, at the moment, it goes 404 on me, so I'm not sure what happened with it. I have to contact the guys that were behind it, Adam Driscoll, I believe. So there was a really nice site where they actually published, but honestly, there are some code challenges for, like, generally for people writing any language. And I would recommend those, because if you read CodeGolf PowerShell, maybe you won't find them. But if you just look up CodeGolf, you might find some problems that are actually applicable for any language, and then try to solve them in PowerShell. I recommend that as a, like, if you really want to play with CodeGolf. So that's what I do normally. Any other question? If not, let's move to the summary. So first of all, suit up, right? Like I did. You don't have to put actual suit on to suit up. Second thing is play it in CodeGolf. So you try it, because if you try it, then your brain starts to work, your brain goes on the journey that is really helping you, and it's really fun. And in the end, you get the muscle memory here, and you also learn a lot of things about PowerShell. And third of all, be awesome, or rather, be like Jaap. Because let's face it, Jaap is awesome, you have to deal with it. So I'm surprised that nobody asked the question, what was the solution for the riddle at first. So the mathematical solution, not the one that I came up with later, after years, is that if you want to satisfy the request from the father, so what he said, he wanted mother to receive twice as much as the daughter, and the son to receive twice as much as the mother. So if you say 1 part, 2 parts, 4 parts, then you have 7 parts, and then you get 4/7 for the son, 2/7 for the mother, 1/7 for the daughter. Problem solved. Thank you very much.